Devils beat writer for NJ.com, Ryan Novozinsky, joins me on today's episode of Locked On Devils. He is chiming in via phone call from Raleigh, North Carolina, as he is covering the game. So we're going to get his thoughts from the last outing for the New Jersey Devils against the Carolina Hurricanes, and also his thoughts on the playoffs in general. And he's also going to give us some insight. Will Lindy Ruff possibly make a lineup change that involves Luke Hughes? We have a lot to talk about in today's episode of Locked On Devils with Ryan Novozinsky, so buckle up and be prepared for a possible Novo bomb.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
All righty now. What is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member Trey Matthews. Joining me all the way from Raleigh, North Carolina, covering the New Jersey Devils for NJ.com, recurring guest on my show, it is Devils beat writer Ryan Novozinsky. So, Ryan, how have the festives been in North Carolina?
It is great here. It's a great state. It's hot here. But of course the hockey was interesting yesterday. But we'll we'll see how it goes moving forward.
Yeah, so the Devils unfortunately came out on the losing end against the Carolina Hurricanes by a score of 5-1. But we've seen this movie pan out before, and the New Jersey Devils just continue to add to what's already been a successful season. So obviously in games 1 and 2 of the previous series against the New York Rangers, they lost 5-1, and I'm sure the Devils are looking to steal one on the road against the Hurricanes. But I want to get your thoughts on the last series in general. What did you notice from the Devils team from your vantage point up in the press box?
I noticed that the Devils tried to get a little bit try to play bigger than they were in the first 2 games. And then they found their pace mixed in with a little bit of defensive aggression, defensive persistence, defensive desperation. And then the Akira Schmid show started, which is, all great stuff. That's a winning formula, for this Devils team. And then, you just go and when they find their regular season legs, not many teams would be hard pressed to say any team can really keep up with them pace wise. But it's all about, quite frankly, like when the Rangers would win their games in the series, they had some of the most desperate defense I've seen from the Rangers all season. And that's, be it blocked shots, which, they were able to do a good amount during the regular season matchups. But it was good. It was really sound hockey, New Jersey Devils hockey. And they needed to play that way, and they certainly did. And that was a refreshing sign if you're Coach Lindy Ruff, or guys like Jack Hughes or Eric Holla, who's really breaking out in the playoffs. It was good. It was a good, fun series, and of course, just the narratives of beating the rivals and what have you was really good to see.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you listened to any of my recent episodes, but when the Devils clinched Game 7 against the Rangers, my 3 stars were Akira Schmid, Jack Hughes, and Eric Holla, obviously not in that order, but and it seems like the underdogs really stepped up big for the Devils in the previous series. So we saw Andre Palat, once he was able to start scoring, he was able to contribute in more ways than one. Kevin Ball and Damon Severson, they were like the most consistent defensive pairing. Eric Holla, I think people are starting to see like why the Devils signed him in the first place. But we didn't really talk much about like Nico Hischier or Jesper Bratt. We talked about Jack Hughes for the first few games, and then sometimes here and there, but it seemed like the underdogs really stepped up for the Devils. And you talked about Akira Schmid, and we always knew how good Schmid was, but I think now the NHL world finally got to see Schmid on a national scale and perform really well. Do you think this level of play for Devils can be consistent throughout the course of the playoffs? Because like I said, I know they have a lot of depth, and I know that a lot of guys have been stepping up their game, but I would like to see Nico Hischier score. I would like to see Timo Meier also score despite contributing physically. I would like to see Jack Hughes maybe show more consistency. And obviously, Jesper Bratt, even though he got an empty netter goal in Game 7, it's just like, when is he going to start to get it going? So I want to get your thoughts on like the underdogs, but is there a concern for the star players for the Devils?
It's kind of a two-pronged thing here. Number one, I think that's kind of the issue maybe sometimes with advanced stats, advanced metrics, analytics. You're seeing that guys like Nico, guys like Jesper and Timo, who's obviously out right now, they're getting the chances, right? They're getting the chances from the dangerous areas. They're getting the scoring chances. They're generating all these things, but it's just not going in. And that's a problem for sure. Don't get me wrong. I think Nico, it's a little bit of a different case because Nico's defensive metrics have been off the charts and really good. But of course, you just want to have him score. He's one of your star players. You really, really want to have him score. So yeah, I think that's definitely a point of concern. I can see that. But at the end of the day, I mean, if they do keep piling on these chances like they did in the first round, and maybe not necessarily like they did last night, then they try to replicate that and get a little bit better of a finishing touch there. I think that the Devils can be fine. Now the issue is you got to go do it, right? Jesper Bratt, you got to go score, man. I don't care how many expected goals you have if none of them wind in the back of the net. And honestly, same goes with Nico Hischier too. I mean, just go out there and do it, man. So easier said than done, of course, but and they are getting the chances, but I mean, at some point you really want to see a breakthrough here. And I think it can happen. I think Nico Hischier offensively is going to be kind of a breakout kind of player here in this series. So I would just, keep watching him and keep watching, some of these other guys. And you mentioned too, the underdogs too. The unsung heroes, almost the Michael McLeods, the Eric Hollas, the even Nathan Bastian got a goal and a couple shots last night. I think it's good to see players like that step up because Carolina has a whole hell of a lot of players that can step up like that. Not your face of the franchise type players that can step up, get you a couple goals. They did that against the Islanders. They did it last night. There was a whole heck of a lot of players that scored last night, not named Sebastian Aho too. So, I mean, you look, like, I think it's good that the Devils have some are finding some scoring depth from their guys. But like you said, I mean, it's time for some of these stars to turn it on too.
There's still more in store with Ryan Novozinsky, but before we continue with today's episode, let me tell you about Built Bar. And just for the record, Ryan Novozinsky told me a few weeks ago via DM that he absolutely loves Built Bars, so you will too. So looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever, Built Bar. You got to try it. I've got one thing for you, Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and tasty, and they are amazing. Seriously. They're so amazing that you won't think that they're actually good for you. So once again, you got to try it. So what makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter, brownie, and cookies and cream. Not sure how Built does it, but somehow, some way, they taste like a candy bar. And they only contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and have a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait to get a box. For years, I've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. However, you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box of our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. So I told you about Ryan Novozinsky's favorite new protein bar, but let's get back to our discussion with them. Take it away once again. Yeah, so it's not slandering like Timo Meier, because Timo Meier's physicality in my eyes was dearly missed in the previous game, because the one thing I could say about Timo Meier is that he led the Devils in hits during the first series against the New York Rangers. And I even read your article about him possibly getting underneath the skin of Igor Shesterkin, and that kind of played that sort of mind game on him, and that kind of affected him in game 5 specifically. So Timo Meyer's impact is certainly there, but I think a lot of fans just want to see that scoring a little bit more. Nico Hischier hasn't scored a goal in over a month dating back to the regular season. And for Jesper Bratt, you're in a contract year. So it's like the value keeps going down and down a little bit more. But looking at this game against the Carolina Hurricanes, obviously the Devils dropped it by a score of 5-1. Before we talk more about how the Devils approach game 2, what were your thoughts on game 1 in general? So like for anyone who missed your latest article and you're actually there in real life in North Carolina. So I want to get your perspective. Like, what was the difference between this 5-1 loss and say the 5-1 loss they suffered in games 1 and 2 against the New York Rangers?
Well, the difference is that the 5-1 losses against the Rangers, there was no hope, right? Like, it really looked like Devils would kind of just implode, maybe get a couple wins here and there after that, after those losses, and then, we'd go to the offseason. But no, I mean, this one, they had probably the worst first period I've ever seen from this team. And then to follow that up with a really, really, really strong second and third period effort too, where, you have the edge, definitely the second period in the high danger category and just chances from the slot, chances, in front of the net, what have you. If you keep getting that, this is not a Hurricanes. The Hurricanes, I mean, Anderson is not going to get you. He's not Shesterkin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can get under their skin, not necessarily in like a Timo Meyer Shesterkin kind of way, but it's very easy. It's very, very easy. I would say for an offense of this caliber to be able to, pump shots on Anderson and get a couple past. Now, again, it's like I said before, you got to go do it now, right? Like you can't let some of these metrics you can't live and die by that. You have to go out there and do it. And it sounds, cliche, it sounds whatever, but that's kind of the reality here. So I think, my overall thoughts on it were there's a lot more hope after this one. And I kind of got that sense around the locker room yesterday as well. A lot more hope, versus this one, versus the Rangers loss. Because they did a lot of good things. But at the end of the day, like, got to neutralize that really, really tough Carolina defense, that really aggressive forecheck that they employed there. It's hard, but and I think a lot of people kind of discredited, myself probably included, how tough this series would be. But Carolina, man, like there's something else. I mean, it doesn't matter who goes down for them. Rod Brindamore can go out there and a game plan adjust and have his team fired up for whatever the test may be.
Yeah, so I think the more one of the more controversial storylines in the previous game was the amount of missed calls by the referees, because there were a couple of missed calls on Stahl. There were a couple of missed calls on Martinook. So it was just like, and one of those missed calls that was when Martinook used his hand to rip the helmet off of Siegenthaler, and that resulted in a Hurricanes goal because Siegenthaler had to go to the bench as soon as he was disengaged from the play per the NHL rule book. So I think when we're looking at hope, it's just like, okay, that first period was probably their worst period of the season, because the Devils, let's face it, their one shot, it wasn't even a legitimate shot attempt. It was more of a dump attempt by Nathan Bastian that just happened to reach Frederik Andersen. So I think PK Subban said it best during the intermission, which is the Devils got to challenge early. They got to find some good shot selection, and they got to find that plan B, because I think that's what's missing for the Devils, is that when plan A doesn't work, they don't really have a plan B. And this is something I've been talking about, which is if things don't go your way, how do you respond to it? So real quick, do you think that there is a plan B for the Devils if plan A just doesn't go their way?
I think, of course there's always a plan B. And whatever Lindy does in game 2, I think you're going to see a much better, because he proved in the Ranger series how good he was at adjusting, and I think he's proved it quite a bit this season. Albeit some of the line changes happened a lot, very frequently. But at the end of the day, like he's a playoff coach right now, and what he did in the first round, adjusting to the Rangers. I think you see that proof there, and this Carolina team is really tough. There's a reason they're in the second round, but I think he can do it against them too. So I'm expecting a much better plan B. What that is, maybe that's, I don't know, switching up some of the lines there. Maybe slotted in a Luke Hughes for Ryan Graves, who he benched at one point. And yeah, I mean, look, to add a dynamic puck mover like Luke Hughes in, albeit the experience is not there 100%. You might do it. You might be tempted to do it, and will that work? Maybe it'll backfire like crazy, but you got to change something up. And I think Lindy will. And yeah, the missed calls are bad, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you could do about. We could sit we could sit here and say, oh yeah, awful missed calls and whatever, and that's it really is awful, but what can you do about it? You gotta kind of adjust around it. There's so many things you cannot control in sports. This is when I played high school football. That's what my coach used to say. He said there's three things. It's EWO, IWO, injury, weathers, and officials. And obviously, weather doesn't really pertain to hockey, but you kind of got IO there. You got the injuries and the officials that you can't really. You got to kind of adjust around. So I think Lindy could do it, and I think this team is going to look much better in game 2. But that's up to them.
Yeah, so this was actually leading into my next subject, which is a lot of people are pushing for Ryan Graves to be scratched because Ryan Graves is one of our better offensive-minded defensemen, but the offense just isn't generating off his stick, and it seems like there's been a couple defensive lapses when he's out there on the rink. So if he's not generating offensively and he's not generating defensively, then why is he out there? I know he led the Devils in defensive point shares during the course of the regular season, and his plus minus was also great, but that goes out the window. And if you're not performing in the playoffs, just ask Miles Wood or Mackenzie Blackwood, you're going to get scratched because you have a limited amount of lives to play with during the course of the playoffs. So a lot of people are pushing for Luke Hughes to possibly start. I have my concerns, which is Luke Hughes is, yes, he's a great player with a lot of potential, but are we really willing to throw him into the pack of wolves? Are we really willing to he's only played 2 regular season games, and yes, they were good, but at the same time, it's just like, is that a big enough sample size for him to play playoff hockey, especially since if the Devils go down 2-0, yes, they go back to the Prudential Center, but do the Devils really want to test that waters once again, which is go down 0-2 and have to tie it up and make it that much harder on yourselves? I'm not saying it'll be on Luke Hughes, but you see the risk kind of thing. And also my personal thing is if Timo Meier is not going to play in the next game, put in Curtis Lazar. I usually say good things about Jesper Boquist, and he's a good skater, but at the end of the day, it's the physicality, the overall presence of that physical caliber player was missing for Devils in yesterday's game. So put in Curtis Lazar, who has no issue of asserting himself physically. So, or is Vitek Vanecek going to start? So I know I'm going all over the board right now, but I want to hear your personal thoughts. Do you think it's appropriate to put Luke Hughes in for game 2? Because if it were to happen, I think, or if it's going to happen, I think game 2 is the best way to do it, because you don't want to put it in an elimination game or a possible must-win scenario. So Luke Hughes going in, Vitek Vanecek going in, Curtis Lazar going in. What would you personally like to see made for the Devils?
Well, to answer this question, Trey, I'm gonna quote your buddy Jersey Joe.
You listen to the show.
I do. I'm telling you, man. I need some more Sasquatch in this Devils lineup, right? You know what I mean?
Here we go.
I think I don't know the exact metric of what Jersey Joe's Sasquatch rating is, but I would assume that Curtis Lazar ranks near the top of that list. So I would like that, especially, we don't know really what's happening with Timo right now. But if he's not in, you gotta get guys in there to physically try to counteract this Carolina attack there, because they are aggressive, and you need some aggression in that lineup. So yeah, maybe it's Lazar, maybe it's I kind of see what you're saying to a point about Luke Hughes, in terms of the inexperience and the
His
kind
defense
of
is
putting
not all that good either. He's very jumpy on the defensive side of things, which puts him out of position. So that's my concern as well. His defense is not exactly all that good.
I think putting him against Carolina like would be a really tough test too. Like this is a really, really good, and I saw some analysts yesterday said that they're kind of like a swarm of wasps, which I thought was very astute. I think that's true, right? Like this is a very aggressive forechecking, back checking attack that can pile some shots on you. They're really, really good. So do you want to put an inexperienced guy like Luke Hughes out there against them? I don't know. All I know is that there's going to be mistakes that are made. There's going to be lineup decisions that are that may come back and bite you, but you're staring at a 1-0 series hole, and which could easily go to 2-0. Got to make some adjustments, right? And I think Lindy can do that. And whether that's Luke Hughes, whether that's a good idea, kind of remains to be seen. But only one real way to find out is to go and do it. And if Graves keeps struggling like this, then maybe you want to go do that versus a guy like Brendan Smith, who, yes, he has experience. Yes, he is. He's a lot more aggressive defensively, but can also bite you by getting some penalties there. Yeah, I mean it's a good question, and I'm very curious to see what happens in game 2. I think Lindy's comments today, he said it's definitely a possibility. So I would be intrigued to see if they'll do it.
All right, last question. What are your expectations for this Devils team moving forward? Obviously, they're down 0-1. It's not the same situation as they were with the Rangers. I don't think it's nervousness playing a factor. And you said the atmosphere is a lot more positive. So I want to just hear your final thoughts for this Devils team moving forward in the playoffs. And what are people saying behind the scenes? Because it's been a while since I've been in the locker room.
This is the house money Devils. This is the team that's their mindset, right? I think a lot of the players have even said that this team is playing with house money. That's not to say they want to go out there and lose this series. Of course they don't. But the growth that they made this season is incredible. And at where they are right now, they can take a loss in 6 games to the Hurricanes and still have a very, very positive season. Of course, I think they could have done that against New York too, albeit it would be a lot more disappointing and stinging. But at the end of the day, I think my expectations for this team moving forward are kind of that, right? Like anything could happen. It wouldn't shock me if this team won this series and came back and won in 6, or wouldn't shock me if they lost in 5. And that's not any prediction or anything. It's just kind of the way this team is made up right now. And I think I'm more inclined to think that they can really charge back and make this interesting. And then you got to move on to your next task. I think the ceiling for this team is, with the teams that are out there, is enormous. It's massive. You can go out there and you could go on a Cinderella run to the cup and maybe even make some noise there. And then the floor is, like I said, five game loss to the Hurricanes. It's very weird because I don't think a lot of teams out there in the playoffs right now, I think it's very clear cut what their ceilings and floors should be. But the Devils, I don't think it really, I don't want to say matters. Of course it does, but they have so much future to them that this is for this to be the foundation year. You're already in the second round of the playoffs, getting that experience, I think that bodes well for them a lot going forward. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
We saw a lot of parity throughout the course of the playoffs so far. And if I've learned one thing, it's to not doubt the Devils. So I don't care if they go down 3-0, unless they lose that final clincher, 000s have hit the board. They are still very much in any competition that they participate in, dating back to the regular season. So Novo, thank you for taking the time out your busy day to come on and basically talk all things Devils. Where can my audience find you, even though they most likely know where to find you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter at Ryan Novo 62. or on nj.com/devils, doing some fun stuff there. It's been an intriguing trip. And it's tiring, man. It really is tiring sometimes. I mean, I didn't have a hotel or flight booked until goodness, like 3 a.m. the morning after the Rangers Game 7 win. So I'm here in Carolina. I'll be traveling throughout the playoffs, kind of, however long it goes, maybe, go to Florida next round or start my summer early here. We don't know. Again, that's kind of the mindset with this Devils. You don't really know. But it's fun nonetheless. I think it's fun nonetheless.
Everybody check out or make sure you subscribe to Ryan's content on NJ.com. I love reading his stuff, and obviously I use him as a source on this show. So Ryan, thank you for taking the time once again. I hope to see you real soon.
Appreciate you, Trey. Thank you so much, man.